It's a familiar story. We see a problem in the world, something that just feels wrong or unfair, and our minds almost instinctively jump to a two-step solution. First, we identify the issue. Maybe it's poverty, a lack of good healthcare, or concerns about the environment. The second step is, well, almost automatic for so many people. We ask, what is the government going to do about it? This reflex is so ingrained in our culture that it often goes unquestioned. The media amplifies it, politicians campaign on it, and pretty soon, it just feels like the only responsible way to think. We're taught that big problems require big, powerful solutions, and honestly, what's bigger or more powerful than the federal government? This impulse, it comes from a good place. It comes from a desire to help, to fix things, and to create a better society for everyone. When we see people struggling, it's totally natural to want a rescuer to step in. The government, with its vast resources, its ability to pass laws, and its sheer scale, looks like the most capable rescuer available. The thinking goes that if a problem affects millions of people, then only an entity with the reach of the federal government can possibly address it. We just assume that a national problem demands a national, government-led solution. This assumption has become the default setting for public discourse, a starting point that is rarely challenged. However, this automatic leap to a government fix is really a mental shortcut that often leads us down the wrong path. It skips over critical questions and ignores a vast landscape of other, often better ways to solve problems. By immediately looking to Washington, D.C., we limit our options before we even begin to explore them. We put our faith in a distant, bureaucratic system that is, more often than not, inefficient, slow to adapt, and disconnected from the real-world needs of the communities it aims to serve. This reflex to call on the government not only produces ineffective solutions, but also weakens the very fabric of civil society, teaching us to wait for instructions rather than to take initiative ourselves. The result is a political culture where every election cycle becomes a bidding war of promises. Politicians compete to offer the most ambitious government programs to solve every conceivable ailment of society. They promise new agencies, more regulations, and bigger budgets, all in the name of doing something about the latest crisis. The media then frames the debate around which government plan is better, never stopping to ask if any government plan is the right approach in the first place. This kind of two-step thinking, while well-intentioned, has conditioned us to see a powerful central government not as a last resort, but as the first and only responder. Before we ask how the federal government should solve a problem, there's a much more important question we need to ask. Should it? Is it even the federal government's job? This, honestly, isn't just a philosophical question, it's a constitutional one. The founders of the United States were very skeptical of concentrated power. They had just fought a war to escape the rule of a king and a distant government that meddled in every aspect of their lives. So, they designed the Constitution to create a federal government with limited, specifically enumerated powers. The idea was that most issues would be handled at the state or local level, or even better, by private individuals and groups. The 10th Amendment to the Constitution makes this principle crystal clear. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. This isn't just some dusty, irrelevant historical text, it's a foundational rule for how our country is supposed to work. It means that if you can't find the authority for a federal program explicitly listed in the Constitution, then the federal government has no business getting involved. The burden of proof is on those who want the government to act, not on the citizens who question its authority. Sadly, this crucial question is almost entirely absent from our modern political debates. We argue endlessly about the details of a proposed federal education bill or a new environmental regulation, but we rarely step back to ask if the Department of Education or the Environmental Protection Agency should even exist at the federal level. We've allowed the government to expand its reach far beyond the boundaries set by the Constitution, often with good intentions, but with poor results. This expansion has happened gradually, with each new crisis serving as a justification for another federal power grab, until we've pretty much forgotten the original design. Asking this constitutional question isn't an excuse to ignore problems. It's the first step toward finding the right solution. It forces us to think more creatively and to consider who is best equipped to handle a particular issue. By respecting the limits placed on the federal government, we empower other parts of society to step up. We open the door for local governments, which are closer and more accountable to the people they serve. We make room for charities, businesses, neighborhood groups, and individual citizens to innovate and compete to find the best ways to help others. The Constitution provides a roadmap, not a barrier, to solving problems effectively. So, what happens if we ask the constitutional question and the answer is no? What if a particular problem, whether it's helping the poor, improving education, or providing for retirement, is not among the federal government's enumerated powers? The answer is simple and, honestly, pretty empowering. Other groups should solve the problem. This is exactly what the founders envisioned. They believed that a healthy, vibrant society, a civil society, depended on people taking responsibility for their own communities. They trusted that when the government stepped back, individuals and local institutions would step forward. This isn't some radical idea. It's really the essence of a free and self-reliant nation. When the federal government is not the default problem solver, we're forced to look closer to home. Local governments, cities, counties, and states are often in a much better position to understand and address the unique needs of their residents. A solution that works in rural Wyoming might be completely wrong for New York City. A one-size-fits-all federal program designed by bureaucrats hundreds or thousands of miles away just can't possibly account for this diversity. State and local governments can experiment with different approaches, creating what Justice Louis Brandeis called laboratories of democracy. Successful ideas can be copied by other communities, while failed ones can be abandoned without becoming a nationwide disaster. Beyond local government, there's a vast and powerful network of private and voluntary organizations. These include charities, nonprofits, churches, synagogues, mosques, and community foundations. For most of American history, these were the primary institutions people turned to for help. They operate on a human scale, driven by compassion and a direct connection to the people they serve. Unlike a government agency, a private charity can offer not just financial assistance but also moral support, guidance, and a sense of community. They can be flexible, innovative, and efficient in ways that a government bureaucracy, tangled in red tape and political incentives, can never be. This approach recognizes that the most powerful engine for progress is not government decree, but human action. It's the entrepreneur who creates a new business that provides jobs and valuable services. It's the community organizer who starts a neighborhood watch to improve safety. It's the group of parents who pool their resources to create a better educational environment for their children. When we assume the government must solve every problem, we discourage this kind of initiative. We tell people to be passive recipients of aid rather than active creators of solutions. By insisting that the federal government stay within its constitutional limits, we unleash the true problem-solving potential of the American people. Defending the ability of private groups to solve problems isn't just some theoretical argument. It's a position supported by overwhelming evidence from our daily lives. Think about the places where we see the most innovation, the best customer service, and the highest quality. Is it at the government-run Department of Motor Vehicles, or at a privately owned grocery store? The grocery store has to compete for your business. It must keep its shelves stocked with products you want, maintain a clean environment, and hire friendly, helpful employees. If it fails, you'll simply take your money to a competitor down the street. This constant pressure to please the customer, that's what drives excellence. This dynamic of competition and accountability is the secret sauce of the private sector, and it applies to far more than just selling groceries. Private charities that compete for donations have a powerful incentive to be effective and transparent with their funds. A donor can look up a charity's overhead costs and success rates and choose to support the one that delivers the best results. Compare this to a federal anti-poverty program. Taxpayers are forced to fund it, regardless of whether it works. There's no direct feedback loop. The program's survival depends not on lifting people out of poverty, but on political influence and bureaucratic inertia. Voluntary groups also have a unique ability to adapt and specialize. The challenges facing a homeless veteran are different from those facing a single mother fleeing domestic abuse. A large, impersonal government program is ill-equipped to handle such specific needs. It must create standardized rules and forms that treat everyone the same. In contrast, the private, nonprofit world is filled with specialized organizations. There are groups dedicated to helping veterans, others focused on abused women, and still others that provide job training for at-risk youth. These groups are run by people with passion and specific expertise, allowing them to provide tailored, compassionate, and far more effective assistance. We must also recognize the power of for-profit businesses to solve social problems, even when that isn't their primary goal. A company that develops a new, cheaper, and more effective medical device does more to advance public health than, honestly, 1,000 government regulations. A firm that creates a new technology to clean water or reduce energy consumption makes a greater contribution to the environment than any government agency. The pursuit of profit, in a free and competitive market, channels human ingenuity toward meeting the needs of others. This is a remarkably powerful force for good, one that we should celebrate and encourage, not stifle with excessive government control. Let's look at some real-world examples where private solutions and self-regulation have proven superior to government control. For decades, the moving industry was heavily regulated by the federal government. The Interstate Commerce Commission set the prices that companies could charge. The result? High prices and terrible service. There was no incentive for companies to compete or innovate. When the industry was deregulated in the 1990s, everything changed. Prices plummeted, service improved dramatically, and new innovative companies entered the market. Consumers were the clear winners. The problem of moving services was best solved not by government planning, but by letting free people make their own arrangements. Another powerful example is the world of product and service reviews. How do you know if a restaurant is good, a hotel is clean, or a contractor is reliable? You don't need a federal restaurant review board or a Department of Hotel Cleanliness. Instead, you turn to private solutions like Yelp, TripAdvisor, or Angie's List. These platforms are built on the voluntary contributions of millions of consumers. They provide a powerful form of self-regulation. A business that consistently gets bad reviews will either improve or go out of business. This system is faster, more detailed, and more responsive to consumer needs than any government rating system could ever hope to be. Consider also the field of technical standards. How is it that a Wi-Fi router made by one company can communicate seamlessly with a laptop made by another? This is not the result of a government decree. It is the work of private, voluntary standards organizations like the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or IEE. Experts from competing companies come together to agree on common standards because it is in their mutual interest to do so. They know that a fragmented market would stifle innovation and hurt consumers. This form of private, cooperative self-regulation is responsible for much of the technological progress we enjoy today, all without the heavy hand of government. Even in areas like workplace safety, private solutions play a huge role. While government agencies like OSHA set minimum standards, many industries go far beyond them through their own safety programs and certifications. Insurance companies also provide a powerful incentive for safety. A business with a poor safety record will face sky-high insurance premiums, creating a strong financial reason to protect its workers. This market-based approach, driven by self-interest and risk management, is often more effective at creating a safe environment than a government inspector who might visit a site only once every few years. Freedom and responsibility work. One of the most predictable and honestly frustrating features of government programs is their tendency to become, well, immortal. A government agency, once it's created, almost never disappears, even if it actually accomplishes its original mission, or, on the flip side, proves to be a complete failure. Unlike a private business that has to succeed or shut down, a government agency's survival isn't really tied to its performance. Instead, it's tied to politics. The agency builds up this whole constituency of employees, contractors, and beneficiaries who will lobby politicians fiercely to keep that funding flowing. The bureaucrats in charge have their own personal interest in expanding their budgets, their staff, and of course, their power. This creates what you might call a ratchet effect. Government just keeps growing, but it almost never shrinks. Think about the so-called war on drugs. It was launched decades ago with the stated goal of creating a drug-free America. By any objective measure, it's been a colossal failure. Drugs are still widely available, often at even lower prices, while the war has cost taxpayers trillions of dollars, eroded civil liberties, and led to the incarceration of millions of nonviolent offenders. Yet, does any politician seriously propose abolishing the Drug Enforcement Administration, or the multitude of other agencies involved? Of course not. The machine is just too big, too powerful, and too entrenched. It's become a self-perpetuating entity, existing to sustain itself rather than to solve the problem it was created for. The same story can be told about the War on Poverty, which was launched back in the 1960s. Since then, the federal government has spent more than $20 trillion on hundreds of different anti-poverty programs. Yet the poverty rate has remained stubbornly stagnant. These programs have created a cycle of dependency, trapping generations of families in a system that actually discourages work, marriage, and self-sufficiency. But do the programs go away? No, they just expand. The Department of Health and Human Services, which administers many of these programs, has a budget larger than the entire economy of most countries. It's a monument to failed intentions and bureaucratic self-preservation. This is a fundamental flaw in the logic of government solutions. We create them to address a temporary problem, but they inevitably become a permanent part of the government. Consider Amtrak, the National Passenger Rail Corporation. It was created in 1971 as a for-profit company to take over a failing industry, with the promise that it would soon operate without taxpayer subsidies. More than 50 years later, it has never turned a profit and has consumed tens of billions of dollars in subsidies. The United States Postal Service is another example. A government-granted monopoly that consistently loses billions of dollars while being outcompeted by private companies like UPS and FedEx. These entities don't survive because they're successful, they survive because they're part of the government. Why do people keep supporting these failing government programs? A big part of the reason is that, honestly, we've been trained to judge government solutions by their intentions, not their results. When a politician announces a new program to end homelessness or ensure every child has a quality education, it sounds wonderful. We feel good supporting such a noble cause. The politician gets to signal his or her compassion, and voters who support the program feel like they're doing something virtuous. The focus is almost entirely on the stated goal, the beautiful promise of what the program is supposed to achieve. The hard, messy work of looking at the actual results is, more often than not, ignored. It's just much less emotionally satisfying to dig through data and find that the program actually made the problem worse, or had no effect at all, or maybe even had massive unintended consequences. It's easier and honestly more pleasant to just stick with the good intentions. If someone points out the failure of the program, they're often accused of not caring about the homeless or of being against education. This tactic effectively shuts down honest debate. It replaces a discussion about what works with a moral judgment about who is compassionate. This focus on intentions gives politicians a free pass. They can propose and pass expensive, expansive programs, and they get credit for caring and taking action. When the programs inevitably fail to deliver on their promises, there's rarely any accountability. The politician has already moved on to the next issue, proposing another new program with another set of lofty intentions. The bureaucracy that runs the failed program will simply ask for more money, claiming the problem was not the program's design, but a lack of resources. The cycle just repeats itself, with good intentions constantly being used to justify the expansion of failed government policies. This is honestly a dangerous way to run a country. In every other area of our lives, we care about results. You wouldn't keep paying a mechanic who never fixes your car, no matter how much he claimed to care about your transportation needs. You wouldn't keep your money in a bank that consistently loses it, no matter how noble its mission statement is. Yet, when it comes to the government, we suspend this common-sense judgment. We accept failure as the norm and allow good intentions to be an excuse for incompetence and waste. To find real solutions, we have to have the courage to be results-oriented and to admit when a government program, despite its noble goals, simply does not work. A common misunderstanding is that questioning government programs is the same as ignoring society's problems. If you argue against a federal housing program, the accusation is that you must not care about people who need shelter. If you criticize a government food subsidy, you're accused of wanting people to go hungry. This is a false choice, a deliberate attempt to frame the debate in a way that makes one side look compassionate and the other cruel. It completely misses the point. The real debate isn't about whether we should help people, but about how we can help them most effectively. Expressing our values and our compassion doesn't require us to use the coercive power of the federal government. In fact, true compassion is voluntary. It's the act of freely giving your own time or your own money to help someone else. When you vote for a government program, you're not giving your own money. You're voting to take money from your neighbors through taxes to fund a program run by distant bureaucrats. While the impulse may be compassionate, the mechanism is one of force. It's fundamentally different from the personal, voluntary charity that builds strong communities and fosters genuine human connection. There are countless ways to show compassion and work for a better world that don't involve lobbying for a new federal law. You can volunteer at a local soup kitchen, mentor a child, donate to a private charity that has a proven track record of success, or start a small business in a low-income neighborhood. These are acts of direct personal responsibility. They allow for innovation, personal connection, and real accountability. Unlike a government program, if your chosen method of helping isn't working, you can immediately change course and try something else. You're in control, not a bureaucrat in Washington. We need to separate the idea of public service from government service. Serving the public is a noble calling that can be pursued in millions of ways outside of government. The entrepreneur who creates a product that makes life better is serving the public. The doctor who volunteers at a free clinic is serving the public. The citizen who organizes a cleanup of a local park is serving the public. We've allowed the government to monopolize the language of compassion. But the truth is, the most meaningful and effective compassion happens at the human level, through the voluntary actions of free people who see a need and decide to do something about it themselves. The conclusion is clear. Our default reliance on the federal government as the great problem solver is, frankly, a mistake. It's a path that is inconsistent with the constitutional principles of limited government, and more importantly, it has a long and proven track record of failure. Government solutions are often inefficient, wasteful, and counterproductive. They create dependency, stifle innovation, and expand their own power regardless of their performance. We've spent decades and trillions of dollars on programs that have failed to solve the very problems they were created to address, from poverty and drugs to education and healthcare. The better path forward is one that places more faith in people and less faith in government. It's a path that begins by respecting the constitutional limits on federal power. By saying no to unconstitutional federal intervention, we're actually saying yes to 1,000 other possibilities. We empower individuals, families, neighborhoods, charities, churches, and businesses to become the primary agents of change and progress. We unleash the creativity, compassion, and ingenuity of a free people to solve their own problems in their own communities. This is not a retreat from our social responsibilities. It's an embrace of a more effective and humane way of meeting them. We must shift our thinking. Instead of judging policies by their good intentions, we must demand results. We must have the courage to look at failing programs and say, this is not working, and we must stop doing it. We must reject the false choice that says the only way to show compassion is through a government program. True compassion is about what works, about what actually helps people improve their lives. It's found in the voluntary, cooperative actions of a vibrant civil society, not in the coercive and bureaucratic machinery of the state. This isn't a message of negativity or cynicism. It's a message of profound optimism. It's a message of faith in the remarkable ability of free individuals working together to overcome challenges and build a better world. The founders of this country understood this. They gave us a system designed to limit government so that society could flourish. For too long, we have drifted from that vision, putting our trust in centralized power and getting disappointing results. It's time to change course. It's time to have faith in freedom, faith in community, and faith in ourselves. That is the path to real solutions.